Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hey, what's happening, Rush Nation? It is time for another waiver wire. We're about to enter week 12. Truncated week this week because you've got the 3 games on Thursday for Thanksgiving. You've got the Dolphins playing on Friday night. So you've got 8 teams playing before the weekend. Highly unusual, but that's Thanksgiving week for you. So it's time to get those waivers in quickly and then have a think about what we're going to do for the rest of the week. And I'll look at a strategy points podcast. I'm going to drop that even earlier this week. I'm going to drop that tomorrow so people can stay on top of things and keep things going. So we will get to that. We'll get to that on tomorrow. Some strategy about how to get through this week, ways to win this week, etc. So, yeah, just a quick one on the waiver wire. Obviously, more injuries this week. Seems to be a recurring theme every week. Significant players. Aaron Jones is down. Kenneth Walker's down. Lots of players going down this week. So it's really crunch time. 3 weeks of the regular season to go. It's almost like a war of attrition now. Who's going to make it to the end? But I'm here to help you out to get you through the next this week with the buys. This week and the rest of the weeks of the fantasy season. So with regards to waiver wire pickups, if you're new to the show, welcome. I go through each position. I'll give you a rough idea of fabs. Good thing about week 12, there is no buys. There's no buys this week. Everyone plays this week. So back to a full 32 teams playing. And then we've got just week 13 buys, which is quite a lot. So some planning to think ahead for that. And then also week 14 buys as well. Let's talk about quarterbacks first of all. And again, it's really thin on the bound on quarterbacks. If you're really struggling for quarterbacks, Jordan Love is the best option available to you. Nearly 21 fantasy points last night. He's available in just over half of leagues. So use ESPN numbers, so 43.7%. It's in Yahoo. He's around about 46. Sleeper, whatever number they throw out there. I always find that to be the most inconsistent. So he should be available in about half of leagues. But appreciate a 12-team league, he's probably less likely to be available out there. But if he is, he's definitely worth a significant chunk of fab, especially if you've got your week 13 buys coming up, because there's going to be that in mind. So week 13, he's got Detroit next week, but then he's got Kansas City in week 13 and New York Giants week 14. So if you've got buys coming in 13 and 14, then you're going to need them. Also, with Aaron Jones going down, I think you're going to see more passing. So I think his volume is going to increase significantly as well. So I think where I'm at with him, he's worth for me anywhere between $5 and $10 of fab. Just simply because it depends on your need. And if you need a player that you've still got a quarterback to go on by, whether that's a Justin Fields, whether that's a Josh Dobbs, whether that's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, all these quarterbacks have still got to go on by, then I would be definitely looking at acquiring Jordan Love. I think he's easily the best of the rest. If we're looking at the rest of the options, really the only other one I could make a case for is Matt Stafford. He's available on Yahoo in nearly 70% of leagues. He's only owned in 31.4% of leagues. He's got Arizona this week, Cleveland the following week, which isn't great, and Baltimore the following week, which again, they're not amazing options, but and then you have got this potential injury from Cooper Kupp, which could obviously then hurt a little bit, but we saw that Stafford was pretty good without Cooper Kupp, so I think he's definitely someone that you can, I don't want to say rely on, but someone that you might need. Again, your other option there is Gardner Minshew. He's available in almost all the leagues. By the way, if I'm looking at monetary value for Stafford, I think he's about $3-4 for me. If you need him and he's the only one available, you have to pay a bit more than that. The only other quarterback for me I would truly consider was 2. One is Gardner Minshew. He's got Tampa Bay next. That's not a bad matchup. He's got Tennessee. and then Cincinnati. So week 14, good matchup. Week 12, good matchup. Week 13, a little sticky, but he should still be, again, it's not amazing. It's not a sexy pick, but ultimately he will give you a safe floor and he'll get you through your matchups. Hopefully, just won't have that. But he can also put up really big points as well, especially with Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, etc. So for me, I would go Minshew over Stafford. So I look at that and think I'd go $4 or $5 for Minshew as well. I would never normally spend this much on quarterbacks, but given the landscape at the moment, I think you have to. Baker Mayfield's the other. He's got Indianapolis, then Carolina, then Atlanta. So, he'd been doing all right. And then really against top defenses, Mayfield is going to struggle. That's kind of what we're seeing. But, and Indy will get some pressure, but I think that's not a bad matchup for him. It's definitely a better matchup in the passing game for him than the 49ers are. So I think he's going to be relatively safe for the next 3 weeks to get you through the bye weeks. He's not going to offer you much upside, but I think he's there. I think you can spend $3-4 bucks on him, and he'll just sort of casually get you through the next few weeks. Let's go to the running back position, and the really big waiver wire ad is someone I've been talking about for weeks, and hopefully you've been listening to him, and that's Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is effectively, for me, the number one waiver wire ad this week. He's available I'm just going to get the number for you. He's available in nearly 70% of leagues in ESPN. His ownership slightly higher on Yahoo. But effectively, he does have some tough games coming up. San Francisco, Dallas, and San Francisco again. But for me, just the fact that Kenneth Walker has this oblique injury, it looks like he's going to be out for, I guess, a couple of weeks. That's how I would look at it. It's a multi-week injury, more often than not, from experience. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not diagnosing him, but that's one I would keep an eye on. But he's a good receiver. He's got everything you need for me. I'd be putting in a significant bit of fab. I think $25 to $30. Wouldn't blame teams that were desperate in a position to shove all in on Zach Charbonnet. But if you've been listening to me, I've been making the case that the move to his role would be progressing and that actually he'd be looking to get more and more work. I also, for the Patreons, did some analysis on quarterbacks who I feel could be in that sort of danger zone with the amount of touches they've had. And Kenneth Walker was someone I potentially highlighted in that range. And I'm not saying that's why it's happened, but, did say that there's a historical level of usage that I expected not everyone to make for 5 or 6 players. So I look at Zach Charbonnet as someone I would easily be putting a significant amount of fab on, because I think he's going to be the sole back or the majority back for the next couple of weeks. I think probably through the rest of the fantasy season, but we'll see what the injury report comes out for Kenneth Walker Jr. But it doesn't look particularly great news if you are Kenneth Walker owners. Just make sure you back that up. The next one is Ty Chandler, someone who's been on this list for a couple of weeks. Chandler is sort of hovering. He's at 49.9% owned on ESPN, and Yahoo is a little bit less than that. So he's kind of on the cusp. He's probably been taken in most of your leagues. But if he is out there, he's still someone that you should be adding. He's just a better football player than Alexander Mattison. And I just don't understand why the Vikings are just persisting. I keep talking about rushing yards over expected, and Alexander Mattison is about the worst player in that metric, along with Rachaad White, and he continues to not really deliver. But I still think he's someone I would be buying as much as possible. But also, I would be starting to look at other players I'd be picking up. So again, with Chandler, Chandler's a hard one to price. I think for me, I wouldn't go as heavy as I would on Charbonnet. I think you're looking at probably somewhere about $15 for Chandler. I think that he has got a cap ceiling with Mattison there, but I'm hoping that they move away from Mattison. So that's the way I would kind of look at that. Other players I would look at that are well under the ownership. I would look at Jaleel McLaughlin. He's got a difficult matchup against Cleveland next week, but then Houston and the Chargers off that are great matchups. The Broncos offense is similarly getting a bit better. And also I think that, with Javonte Williams, he's someone that hasn't stayed healthy in the league. It's a horrible thing to say, but you've got to take advantage. And I think Jaleel McLaughlin is someone who could be someone useful for the rest of the regular season and also the playoffs. I think you can sneak him under the radar. I don't think you need to spend too much. Somewhere about $5 to $8 is about where you could get Jaleel McLaughlin for, I think, in most leagues. If you're desperate, putting up a bid to about 10, but I wouldn't go too much more than that for him. The other one I'd look at, Roshan Johnson, is someone, again, I've talked about a lot as a player to own. Khalil Herbert didn't look great yesterday. It's not surprising he's come off his injury. Donta Foreman left the game with an ankle injury, and he didn't return. So it was all left to Roshan Johnson. He was the one that got the majority of the work when that happened. So for me, I would be back in on Johnson. I think you can get him, given the stat line, if people are just box score looking at him, wouldn't have seen good usage. I think you can get him for about $5. I think if you really want him, you can probably get him for about $7. He's going to be available in about 75 to 80% of leagues. So he should be available in most of your leagues. He's someone I'd be dipping in on. Yes, there's a bye week 13, which is quite annoying. He comes out of that bye with Detroit, which again, really irritating. But he's someone in the Fantasy Plus could be relevant. He has got Minnesota next. So not a bad matchup at all. And then my usual list of people just to keep an eye on: Tank Bigsby, Rico Dowdle, Kenneth Gainwell, Jordan Mason, Tajay Spears. They're the ones I'd be keeping an eye on, especially with the usage if something happens to the lead back in those situations. Moving on to wide receivers now. And, there's a few out there that you can add. I always think this is the hardest position to really get right on the waiver wire, but I've got a few names that I'm going to give you here. I'm just going to put the best list. One I would be sneaking on is Josh Downs. I think a lot of people probably dropped him last week. His usage his ownership went down about 6% last week of people that were dropping him because he's on bye. He's 44.7% owned. So there's a good chance he's available in your league. He has some good matchups coming up with Tennessee, Cincinnati. Yes, and I talked Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. Has got Tennessee in the middle there, which isn't the worst matchup. But I think you're going to see Downs. I talked about him on the show recently where I think it was the flagship show last week, where his usage went down because he was injured. And that was normal. But now he's had a week to get healthy. I think he's going to be really, really good. I'm looking at his matchup in particular against the Bucs in week 12. They give up a significant amount of points to slot receivers. I think they're in the top 10 in terms of PPR points allowed to slot receivers. So I'd be getting Josh Downs in. This is a really good matchup for him. So I'd be looking to get in on him there. And I think just keep an eye out because he could have been dropped in a lot of leagues. Damari Douglas is going to go with the same names. He's still available in nearly 70% of leagues. He's there to be picked up. 70 to 75% of the leagues he's available in. So he's got the Giants and the Chargers in his next two games, which are phenomenal matchups. He's been carrying almost a 28% first read share since week 7. So good usage there. And again, I think New England are going to want to test what they do at the quarterback position, and they're going to see what happens there. He's also putting up sort of wide receiver 3 numbers in his last 3 games. He's been hovering around that sort of wide receiver, anywhere between wide receiver 24 and wide receiver 29. So again, player I'd be looking at to own. Jaden Reed's a guy I've talked about so much, and I wish people would keep listening to me because Jaden Reed, I'm pounding the table for. He's someone I desperately want, and I've got on a lot of my teams. He's still available in over 80% of leagues. Scored a great rushing touchdown yesterday. He's putting up some really, really good weeks. I'm really a big fan of what he's doing. He is a big part of this offense. And I think now with the injury, as I've said, they're going to throw the ball more. And I think the biggest recipient there is Jordan Reed. Just with regards to some of the fab on these, I think you could get Josh Downs for sort of 6 to 7% of fab. I think you can get Demario Douglas for 5% of fab, given how long he's been there. I think you can get Reed for 5% of fab, and I'd be looking to buy in on him absolutely as well. If you're looking for some game week breakers, I would definitely be looking at Radil Shahid. He again, another player that's probably been dropped quite significantly. About 5% of owners in ESPN land dropped him because he was on bye last week. Another player you pick up. He's available in over 75% of leagues. He's got Atlanta, Detroit, and Carolina next. They're going to look to deal with something. You've got Michael Thomas with a knee injury. So I think you've got Shahid that's going to have a continual usage in this offense. And again, he's a game breaker. He's someone that he has got the lowest of floors and the highest of ceilings. So he will either put up like a wide receiver 60 week, or he's going to put up a wide receiver 5 week. And that's the difference. I think you're looking at people who are going to potentially benefit you and get you out of a tight spot. Radil Shahid is someone that you can get. And get at relatively low cost as well. So I look to get him for sort of under 5% of fab. I'd also look at Noah Brown. Noah Brown was ruled out last week. He's still under 50% owned. Yes, he's dealing with an injury, but I want all pieces of this offense. He put up back-to-back 100-yard games in his 2 weeks prior to last week. So he's someone I would be buying in on as well. Again, I think you can buy him for because of the injury. I think you can probably get him a lot cheaper. I wouldn't spend a lot on him. I'd only spend sort of 3-4%. It'd be interesting to see what happens there between him and Woods. Who's going to end up with that starting role? Well, effectively the wide receiver 3 role in that offense, because it's clearly Dell and Collins that are ahead of them both. Another one you could potentially look at as well is OBJ. OBJ is still hovering around. He had a 100-yard game on Thursday. He's available in 40. He's available in 56% of leagues. He had a big week. People are going to put some serious fab on him. I wouldn't go too crazy, just because of the fact that this isn't the best passing attack we've ever seen, even with Todd Monken. He does have a really good matchup this week and then the bye. I think people are going to spend more on OBJ because of the name and the fact he put up 100 yards receiving. And maybe because of the fact that we've seen Mark Andrews go down, people might fall into that route. I think he's worth 5% of fab. I wouldn't spend more than that. I like the other options better just because I think they're going to give you something a little different. But again, OBJ, nice option there, but I think people are going to go wild. One I absolutely love, and again, talked about loads, is Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell is available in 75% of leagues. He didn't have a huge outing yesterday. But I do think if Cooper Kupp is missing time, then I think that we saw earlier in the season, Tutu Atwell will be the biggest beneficiary of that. I think you can sneak him under the radar for $1. I don't think you need to spend big money on him to get him. But I do look at him and look at the matchups they've got. I think they're going to need to get vertical and put places in there. So I would look at that and go, let's get Tutu Atwell in. I think you can buy him cheap and go there as well. And then we saw Khalil Shakir. He's another one. He's available in 90% of leagues. He's got a bye coming up. He's got Philadelphia and Kansas City. Philadelphia do give up the most points to wide receivers currently in the NFL. So could be a really nice 1 week play with Shakir. You can add him for probably $1 or $2. And just keep an eye on Zay Jones. Hasn't done too much. But he did return back. He did play nearly 70% of the snaps. I do think he's got a role in this offense if he's healthy. And we've seen the fact that him and Lawrence do get on very, very well, that they have a good rapport, especially in the red zone. I'd be looking to get him in. You could probably spend about $1 to get him as well. Tight ends, I mean, Isaiah Likely's the big one. We've kind of seen this before where there has been Isaiah Likely in and he hasn't quite ever lived up to it. But it seems to be that if it's ever going to happen, this is the time that we know how much they fancy their tight ends there in Baltimore. It's never really happened for him so far, but this could be the change. I think he's worth a speculative add. I wouldn't go crazy. I'm probably lower than all your analysts on him. I'd spend $4 or $5 on him, 5% of fab. Wouldn't go much crazier than that. I think unless you've lost Mark Andrews and you've lost the tight end, then I would spend a bit more on him. But ultimately, I think, I would spend sort of 5% of your fab on him, $5 for him, because I think he could be a wide receiver, a tight end one most weeks. Cade Otton is getting more and more involved in this offense. You can pick him up. He's available in 75% 75 to 85% of leagues. So you can definitely pick him up. He is someone that I think is, I don't think he has a high ceiling, but I think he's available there as a 1 week, 2 week rental for $1 or $2. But I wouldn't tend to use him past all the buys. And Luke Musgrave is someone I'm probably more interested in. He's available in 60% of leagues. And I think now the fact that they might pass the ball more, now the fact there's no Aaron Jones, I think you're looking at Luke Musgrave and thinking he's someone that can come in. And I don't think people are really on Luke Musgrave. They've had the opportunity to get in on him. But now I think is the time to put some good fab in on. Well, I don't think you need good fab on him. I think you can probably get Musgrave for probably $2, and I think that will do you absolutely fine until the end of the season. His ownership has gone up to nearly 30%, but I still think you can add him for a relatively low cost. Now, if I'm looking at streaming defenses, it depends if I'm looking in the short term or the longer term. The New Orleans Saints has been dropped quite significantly. They're a really good defense to own. But teams that perhaps let go of defenses, they're a good one to really pick up on this week. They're available in, I think, about half of leagues. ESPN have them slightly over 50%. But they're a good defense to buy. Have a look because people would have dropped them last week, but they probably are owned in most leagues. They've got a decent run of fixtures with Atlanta and Desmond Ridder coming back to them, and Carolina in 2 of the next 3 games. They do have Detroit in the middle there, which could be a bit sticky. I really like Denver's backup. I've been picking them up in a few places. You've got Cleveland next, and what they've got going on there with DTR. And then you've got Houston, which, okay, that's a tricky matchup. And then you've got the Chargers, which I think they can definitely get turnovers from. So I like the Broncos defense for the next couple of weeks. The Saints defense is pretty good. You've also got the Vikings. They've got Chicago and Vegas, but they do have to buy in the middle of their week 13, but they could be ones to pick up. Or you've got New England, and they've got the Giants and Pittsburgh in the next 2 of the next 3 games. They've got the Chargers in the middle there, so they might have been dropped a lot because they haven't put up too many points. But they're a good one to pick up on as well. These are all $1 to $2 bids. Depends if you need a defense. If you do, these are some options out there for you, but they will just give you a bit of cover. Like I said, games coming in Thursday, so don't forget to set your lineups extremely early. What I tend to do on Thanksgiving week, I tend to do this most weeks, but I especially would do this on the Thanksgiving week. I would look to do, once waivers clear, I would look to set my lineups sort of as soon as, and then I've got them done. If something happens and you're struggling to get them done, you can get them done nice and early, but then I have a lot more lineups set than most people. And then I would look to just do some tweaks sort of before the games kick off on Thursday. So I know people work and probably aren't able to necessarily do it during the day on Thursday. So what I do is set them on Wednesday and then maybe check them before you start work on Thursday morning for the latest updates and make sure that you've got everything covered there for you. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll do a strategy points podcast. I'll give you as much information as I can gather this early. Typically, I wait till later on the week because I get better information. However, because of the short week, I kind of want to make sure that we can at least give you some good information to help set up for this week. It's a tricky week where to put players because of the Thanksgiving week slate. What you're going to do with your flex spots, what you're going to do with the rest of your team, and just anything to get you through. So I'll get that across tomorrow. It'll probably be dropping on podcast first, and then I'll probably put the video out because I don't want it to clash with the Dynasty show. So I'll probably put the video out on Wednesday morning for everybody, so you can watch it there. But you can get it on podcast first as well. So just keen to get this one wrapped up and then keen to get the podcast out for the Strategy Points podcast. So do check that out. Do like and subscribe the YouTube channel. That would be a great help to all of us, but also as well to the Patreon. You can just gather me almost any time through the Patreon. You can get me there, and because you'll join our exclusive WhatsApp chat, lots of chat goes on, lots of strategy, good fantasy minds in there. So you can join that now. It's just £1 a month plus the tax. So get involved there and make the most of it. But Rush Nation, until the next time, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.